The Paranormal Borderline will return.
Tim and Lisa Howard make a good argument for believing in the paranormal. Why? Because they're skeptics. There's no way they'd think aliens were swooping down at night to perform experiments on their cattle. That was before July of 1995. They're not skeptics anymore.
I thought it was kind of weird because everything else had frost on it, and she didn't, and she was still pretty hot. So she knew she hadn't been dead for a long time.
There was no tracks, no predators. I mean, it was too perfect.
I guess we kind of looked for an explanation because it was weird, you know. It was something that we hadn't seen before.
Klamath Falls, Oregon is a quiet rural farm and ranch community where the people take their cattle ranching very seriously. Tim Howard has been ranching for close to 40 years and is well respected in the area. But late last year, the Howard family found one of their herd dead in a bitter afternoon frost. There was nothing unusual about the calf's death until the Howard's son, 12-year-old Heath, took a closer look.
Her left eye was gone, and left ear, and her tongue were cut off at the teeth when we just found her.
Well, I drove up and the boys were headed back, and I asked them if everything went all right. They said, yeah, but they had a dead cow down there, a dead heifer, so I drove down there and looked.
Heath's friend had recently read an article about cattle mutilations and said their calf looked very much like what the article had described.
When Cody told me about this article about these cow mutilations, I didn't believe him. I didn't think that it ever happened to us or something.
And I went up there and got that article and read it, and then me and the neighbor went back and looked again. I'll be damned if it wasn't like it was in the magazine.
Roy Myers is an investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, an organization which explores paranormal phenomena. According to Myers, the Howard's cow was a textbook mutilation.
This is a near classic case. You have certain body parts removed. In most of these cases, the cows are laying on the right side, no tracks, and the lack of blood at the scene.
The bizarre way in which the animal was killed simply has no logical explanation. The Howards are certainly troubled by the loss of one of their livestock, but they are more troubled by the question the killing raises. The Howards reported the incident to the local game warden. Like most cattle mutilation reports, it was passed off as a predator kill. But Tim Howard and his family say this is no earthly predator they know of.
About the only predator in this area is a coyote, you know, and if a coyote killed her, he'd have had her ate up. He'd have had the cow ate up pretty good. That cow wasn't ate up, it was cut up.
I don't think they really want to get involved in something that can't be explained. So they're just going to give you an explanation and call it good and be on their way.
We can immediately rule out the predator theory because there's no blood at the scene. And the extraction of the tissue and the teats and everything else is just too neat.
No tracks, no physical evidence, no witnesses. Just a lot of unanswered questions. It is Roy Myers' quest to find answers.
The tests are revealing to us that there is, in fact, a change at a cellular level, and the instrument being used is in excess of 300 degrees.
That looks like, burnt flesh.
It's hot enough to melt hemoglobin. It has been speculated that a laser may have been used. But the only problem we have with that is if you use a laser, there is going to be carbon residue left. And in all the cases examined, there has been no carbon residue.
Local reporter Jean Bilodeaux has been investigating paranormal activity in the Oregon area for the past 5 years. She says there have been 10 mutilations in the region in the last year. And the numbers are growing.
I talked to one rancher last night that lost 6 in one night. And at about $1,000 a head, that can take your profit right away.
According to Jean, 2 months before the Howard mutilation, Bill and Jean Barton, 300 miles away in Red Bluff, California, found 2 of their own cows mutilated in the same fashion as the Howards.
Well, other ranchers said it has happened to them. do not talk about it because they're ridiculed by the law enforcement officers. The reason why Bill and I went public was because it was a big financial loss for us, and we wanted to know why our cows died.
The only clue to these high-tech mutilations came from the Barton's neighbor and fellow rancher, Phil Leroy. While walking his dogs late one night, he saw 3 black helicopters silently hovering over the field where the Bartons later found their mutilated calves.
They were flying in a 12-4 formation, standard military type formation. After they hung there for the amount of time they did, they nosed down and took off south like they were shot out of a gun. I think the government knows about the mutilation. I think they know exactly what's going on, but they're afraid to tell the public.
What, if anything, do the black helicopters have to do with these horrifying cattle mutilations? Are the Bartons and the Howards just random victims? Are the mutilations part of a top-secret medical experiment, or is it a high-tech UFO encounter? Meanwhile, the killings continue, and one thing is clear. There is no rational explanation.
When you eliminate some of the obvious things that they are not, as predator kills or Satanists, then you're left with things that are a little bit more bizarre.
A lot of people talk about the cults, if it's a cult, that have come and cut parts off and things like that. But and you wonder, well, how'd they get the cow to die? You just can't walk up to it and say, die cow, and it falls over.
It's pretty hard to get a 1,200-pound animal to lay down while you cut her up. That's... Don't know. Pretty weird.
Cattle mutilation stories have been with us for the past 20-some years. And I just don't get it. Why would vastly superior beings capable of interstellar travel fly to this planet and mess around with our cows? We'll be right back.